Hello and welcome to the second lecture of 12th week, that is the 57th lecture of this particular course. Today we are going to discuss on India's climate action. In continuation, we will discuss on INDC, that is Intended Nationally Determined Contribution. Through this, we will cover the following concepts. We will introduce the term INDC, what does it mean, and how it is also a kind of binding to all the nations who are a signatory to the Paris Agreement. Then we will discuss about the legal framework under Paris Agreement, that is Article 4, and this key component of INDC that came into place or came into existence since 2015. And also we will see what are the targets as far as quantitative targets are concerned, and how this is updated at annual scale or at a periodic scale. Then we will also see India's progress on NDC targets with respect to the renewable energy, the carbon sinks, the sustainable lifestyle, and also India's future targets as far as 2030 and 2070 are concerned in the context of net zero pathways. Friends, NDC, or you say an intended nationally determined contribution, is a public place which is taken by a nation or a country in individual capacity, and it is it plans, or through this place a country plans to play its part in post 2020 collective action on climate change. So what does it mean? It's a self place by any country, and through that it commits, or a country commits, to take some collective action towards climate change. So these contributions are, as far as India is concerned, the INDC, or India's intended national determined contribution, is targeted to be achieved by or before 2030 or end of this particular decade. So what are the key features or legal framework? So the key features are, it was established under Article 4 of the Paris Agreement. Friends, as we have already discussed, that under Article 4 of Paris Agreement 2015, each country should bring out their own IDC or INDC, Intended National Determined Contribution. In that, they will have to have a place that by 2030, what are the actions or collective actions they are going to commit, or a self commitment or a self place one country is taking. So this is mentioned in Article 4 as far as the Paris Agreement is concerned. So the second framework is, every country must submit NDCs every 5 years. So this is a kind of recurrent or kind of update time period. So at every 5 years, NDCs should have their new or revised national determined contribution that needs to be submitted at every 5 years interval. Then the principle of common but differentiated responsibilities. So this also has been agreed upon, that yes, there is a common responsibility that we all will work towards the climate change, or arresting or slowing down of the pace of climate change, or you say the pace of temperature rise. But there will be differentiated responsibility. That means the developed countries who have already emitted lot of greenhouse gases, or you say lot of CO2 equivalent gases, so they owe a higher responsibility to contribute towards climate change mitigation and adaptation. Whereas, or in comparison to the underdeveloped or developing nations who who are least developed, who have not emitted means that much of gases or greenhouse gases in comparison to these developed countries, and who are not that much capable to bring down or execute so much of actions that leads towards climate change adaptation and mitigation. So that falls under the principle of CBDR, that is common but differentiated responsibility. The fourth is each successive NDC must be more ambitious than the previous one. So that has been agreed upon in terms of the ratchet mechanism, that yes, if we are talking that today, we have already discussed that the first agreement, when it came into force in comparison to the Kyoto Protocol 2012, so we all agreed that we will bring down the emission level by 5.2% in terms of reduction in comparison to 1990 level. Then after 10 years, we are saying that we should take it to 18% in comparison to 18% reduction in comparison to the 1990 level. That is what is the ratchet mechanism talks. So that means each successive NDC must be more ambitious than the previous one. India submitted its INDC, or Intended Nationally Determined Contribution, to the UNFCCC on 2nd October 2015. So in that way, India became the first country to submit its NDC under the Paris Agreement Article 4. The core components of India's INDC strategy are: it is prepared in a balanced and comprehensive manner to reflect all issues of mitigation, adaptation, finance and technology transfer and capacity building. So first is mitigation, second is adaptation, third is finance, fourth is technology transfer, and fifth is the capacity building. So that means it is a kind of balanced and comprehensive document which reflects all of this in terms of these 5 keywords or 5 aspects. The proposals are on the following. One is sustainable lifestyle. So we have to follow a kind of sustainable lifestyle. That means we need to optimize consumption of our natural resources. Cleaner economic development. So the development has to be clean and green. We cannot the economic development should not come or should not be at the cost of environment, but it will come. But what happens? It has to have to maintain a difficult balance or a strategic balance between environment. So economic development has to maintain a balance with the environment. The third is reduce emission intensity and GDP. The fourth is increase the share of non-fossil fuel based electricity. Yes, we have been discussing this throughout the course, that the non-fossil fuel based electricity or energy generation and consumption has to be given emphasis, because that is clean and that is green. And in future, if we completely switch from the non-fossil to the non-fossil fuel based electricity or energy, then perhaps we will emit nil to the atmosphere. The fifth is enhancing the carbon sink or forest. So if we enhance the forest, so according to Aichi target, we need to have, the world needs to have 33% of land under forest cover. So that means 1/3 of the land cover has to be under forest cover to maintain a complete ecosystem balance. What does it mean? That means we will provide the required space for our wildlife. We will have the required forest cover to counterbalance the emission what is coming out of our anthropogenic or the human induced activities. So we need even if for other needs in terms of wood and timber and other needs, we need to have 33% or one third of our land area under forest cover. So we must work towards enhancing the forest so that we can enhance the carbon sink. It is straight as that. If more forests are there, more vegetation is there, then we'll have more photosynthesis. In the process of photosynthesis, we all know that that carbon dioxide is withdrawn from the atmosphere. So this carbon dioxide withdrawal from the atmosphere, which we understand through the process of photosynthesis done by the vegetation material in vegetation components, including the forest. The sixth one is adaptation. We must adapt to the climate change. So that is one of the very important aspect or proposal that are being offered by INDC. The seventh is mobilizing finance. To execute all these adaptation and mitigation measures, we need mobilization or mobility of finance. So there has to be mechanism through public, through private, or through joint, the finance mobilization. We already have discussed in one of the week where we have discussed totally on the climate finance aspect. Coming to the eighth one is the technology transfer and capacity building. Whatever technology that helps in terms of climate change adaptation and mitigation, we must transfer this irrespective of where it has been developed and who has developed. But for the larger interest of the society, larger benefit of the society, the technology needs to be transferred all across who are involved and indulged in terms of bringing out or involving in terms of mitigation or adaptation actions as far as climate change is concerned. And also we need to build capacity so as to comply to the climate change necessities. Now let us move on to the commitments in terms of targets, progress, and net zero pathways. The Article 4 of the Paris Agreement provides that each party shall communicate a NDC that we have discussed, and every 5 years it has to be updated, and this has to be in accordance with the decision request parties to communicate or update this contribution at every 5-year scale. India hereby communicates an update to its first NDC submitted earlier in October 2015 for the period up to 2030. So, what we understand that India's NDC is ambitious. It is a significant contribution towards the goal of the Paris Agreement. Environmentally sustainable, low carbon initiatives are underpinning all key sectors of the Indian economy. This update to India's existing NDC is a step forward towards our long-term goal of reaching net zero by 2070. So, we understood in terms of the Panchamrit also discussed in some of our previous classes that with this we are going to achieve net zero by 2070. So, India's 2015 NDC targets emission intensity reduction. So, reduce the GDP emission intensity by 33 to 35% by 2030 from the 2005 level. So, this is one of the very important target as far as India's 2015 NDC is concerned, that it has been so much committed or so much trying, a pledge has been taken to reduce the GDP emission intensity by 33 to 35% by the end of this decade. Then non-fossil energy target. So, achieve 40% of the installed power capacity, that means from non-fossil fuel sources by 2030. So, from all the non-fossil fuel sources, as we have discussed earlier also, solar, wind and others, including the hydrogen. We need to achieve 40% of our other electricity demand by end of this decade. So that is as far as the non-fossil energy target is concerned. So the next is, as far as 2020 target is there as NDC, put forward and further propagate a healthy and sustainable way of living based on traditions and values of conservation and moderation, including through a mass movement for life. So life is the abbreviation, stands for lifestyle for environment. It is a key. It is key to combating the climate change. So that is very important that we must propagate a healthy and sustainable way of life, which is based on tradition and values of conservation and moderation. That is what is important as far as life is concerned. So lifestyle for environment. So the next is reduction in emissions. India intends to lower the emissions intensity of its GDP by 45% by the year 2030. This 45% target in the GDP reduction is compared to 2005. So as we discussed previously, creating carbon sink, India aims to develop an additional carbon sink of 2.5 to 3 billion tons of carbon dioxide equivalent through afforestation and reforestation initiatives. Fourth is energy from renewables. By 2030, the country aims to fulfill 50% of its energy. So look at this in terms of NDC. The first one, reduce emission intensity by 33 to 35% by 2030. Second is achieve 40% of power capacity from non-fossil fuels. Third, enhance adaptation investments in vulnerable sector, mountains, the coastal sectors, many other sectors where it is too vulnerable. The fourth is mobilize domestic and global climate finance. It is important because for execution of any adaptation and mitigation measures, we need finance flow. The fifth is create a 2.5 to 3 billion ton carbon sink. So if we create this much of carbon sink, then we are doing good as far as meeting our reducing our emission target. Then promote sustainable living, as we understand all that if we follow a sustainable living which is green and clean, then perhaps we are emitting less and well matching to the requirement of sustainable development. Adopt a cleaner development path. So clean development path needs to be adopted. And the eighth one is foster climate technology and R&D. So also apart from the nature-based solution, we also need to foster the climate technology through R&D and prototype or protocol development, and then upscaling this for a larger scale adoption. So the current status, as of 2019, 33% emission intensity reduction already achieved. As of November 2024, 46.8% of non-fossil electricity capacity has been reached. So 2035 NDC submission delayed, likely to be submitted later ahead of. So this is just 3 days before, I think on 26th of March, this particular 2035 NDC has been finalized as far as India is concerned. Let us move on to the India's 2035 climate targets. You see on the upper side, this particular one has been taken from the TERI, the Energy Research Institute, earlier named as Tata Energy Research Institute. This Institute of India is doing good as far as the climate related activities, negotiation, adaptation, mitigations are concerned. And also on the upper side, which are with a kind of red or a reddish was, are talking about India's major announcements for climate change. So, June 2008, the NAPAC, National Action Plan on Climate Change, have come into force. And in October 2015, India's NDC, Nationally Intended, Determined Contribution, which has come into place, marked India's commitment to the Paris Agreement with ambitious climate targets for 2030. Then in November 2020, declaration of the private sector on climate change. So, this private sector participation including their contribution and financial aspect also has been declared, and declared at India CEO Forum. Now, India's NDC 2.0, which was declared in August 2022, that talks about enhanced climate targets aligning with India's long-term net zero goal by 2070. So, in August 2022, this has been declared, which we call that India's NDC 2.0. And in July 2024, constitutional right to a healthy environment enhanced in India, and in 2026, particularly just in the last week, that means 26th March 26, this was declared the NDC 3.0. That includes the target for 2035. On the lower side, we can see a lot of actions and agendas and conventions has been carried out by TERI, including Corporate Action Plan, including Sustainable Tomorrow, Delhi to Paris, guiding framework for India's long-term strategy, kind of fiscally responsible green stimulus, CEOs for future prioritizing business action for ocean recovery, then TERI's industry charter for near zero emission target by 2050. Then India, a kind of transformation to net zero emission energy systems. You can see the India transforming to net zero emissions energy systems, a call to action to 2030 report. And then in 2025, India's 2035 climate target, business opportunity for growth and global leadership. So, these are a set of conventions which TERI has conducted with Indian, and that has taken forward the India's climate change sector. So, the mitigation actions in India's INDC, Intended Nationally Determined Contribution. So, there are 13. So, category 1, carbon intensity. So, 33 to 35% reduction. Non-fossil fuel, we understand 40% by 2030. Wind power capacity. So, increase in installed capacity to 60 gigawatt by 2022. Solar power capacity. So, target is, our intention is to increase the installed capacity as far as solar power capacity is concerned to 100 gigawatt by 2022, which already we have crossed, and we'll update this soon. And the biomass power capacity, increase installed capacity to 10 gigawatt by 2022, and the small hydropower capacity in terms of increase installed capacity to 5 gigawatt by 2022, and nuclear power capacity increase in installed capacity to 63 gigawatt by 2032. And coming to afforestation, increase in forest tree cover to 5 million hectares and 100 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent carbon sequestration annually. Coming to the energy efficiency, 10% reduction in the current energy consumption by 2019. The cess on coal, $2 per ton of carbon dioxide emission cess on coal has been levied. Building sector, replacement of 200 million incident bulbs and reductions of the energy consumption in fans by 50% by penetration of super sufficient, or you say by the penetration of this super efficient fan. Coming to the transport sector, 20% blending of biofuels both by biodiesel and bioethanol by 2017, 6 to 7 million hybrid and electric vehicles per year by 2020. Then the third is switch from Bharat stage 4, that means BS4 fuel to Bharat stage 5 BS5 and then 6 BS stage 6 across the countries. As far as industry sector is concerned, 4 to 5% reduction in specific energy consumption compared to 2012. Compared to 2012 level, using market-based energy efficiency trading mechanism covering 8 energy-intensive industrial sectors. Now, moving on to India's progress on NDCs. So, on the right hand side, you see the renewable energy sector, solar power 58.73%, wind power 30.65%, and the others as far as biomass, small hydel biomass in terms of non-bagages, and then waste to energy and waste to power. We know that renewable energy 175 plus gigawatts renewable capacity has been achieved by 2020. The target was to achieve 500 gigawatt non-fossil capacity by 2030. So, there has been a rapid growth in terms of solar, wind and hybrid energy systems. Coming to the emission intensity reduction, 29% reduction to the 2005 to 2020. Already 24% lower has been achieved by 2016, and the next target is additional 10 to 20% reduction. So, as far as 41.5% of installed capacity from non-fossil fuel is concerned, renewable contributes to 28% and hydropower contributes to 11%. Then the most important sector is forest, as we discussed. It is the cleanest, cheapest and the greenest. So, you see the target is to achieve 33% as far as IG target is concerned. And then look at this, if we enhance the carbon, because forests they enhance the carbon sequestration, the carbon dioxide withdrawal from the atmosphere by the process of photosynthesis. So, we need to take up afforestation and other conservation programs. So, as far as this graphics is concerned, 2013 to 2023, the expansion in terms of forest cover from 698,712 square kilometer to 715,343 square kilometer. Whereas there is also a decline in terms of the fire incidents from 2021-22 to 23-24. So, in the first one 21-22 it was 223,333 and it came down to 203,544. So, that itself is a good decline in terms of the fire incidents in these 2 consecutive years. So, the summary of results for electricity generation for non-fossil fuels, you can see it here in terms of the lower carbon growth report is concerned. And to prepare this slide, we have taken the help of these references or citations. If you want to get into more, you are advised to refer to these references. So, what we discussed before, to conclude, we discussed that the intended nationally designated contribution as far as India is concerned. It presents an important opportunity for India to showcase its climate leadership through the communication of its past, present, and future ambitions in the climate arena. India's NDC reflects a balanced approach integrating mitigation, adaptation, finance, and technology transfer. Updated NDC 2020 strengthens ambitions as far as all these targets are concerned. So, India's strategy reflect development and climate action, keeping or maintaining a critical balance. And also, the strategy also reflects a long-term commitment to achieve net zero by 2070. Thank you very much.